Bonjour à toutes et à tous, bienvenue dans l'invité de Financial Afrique qui reçoit aujourd'hui pour vous Monsieur Claver Gatete, le secrétaire exécutif de la Commission économique pour l'Afrique des Nations Unies en marge de l'Africa Food Forum. Monsieur Gatete, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Merci d'être avec nous. Donc, je le disais tantôt, lors de ce Africa Food Forum, alors que la souveraineté alimentaire et la mobilisation des investisseurs sont au cœur des discussions, quel message essentiel souhaitez-vous transmettre aux décideurs et investisseurs sur les réformes et actions prioritaires pour transformer le potentiel agricole africain en levier de développement économique et de résilience?
This is the right time for us to be able to discuss how we improve the agriculture productivity and also the transformation that we are talking about. And this can be done in a way of regional value chains. We can no longer do it only at the country level, but we can also do it at the regional level. We already know what is required. The whole regional value chain, even at the country level, from production to processing to value addition that is required, we all know what to do. And I think what is very important now is how to implement, how to mobilize resources that are really geared to implementing the agriculture value chain. And this one is different from the normal resources that are required that you mobilize from the commercial banks. And that's what we have been discussing here over the last 2 days, looking at the infrastructure that is required in terms of moving goods from the field to the consumers, in order how to trade from one country to another, creating the different corridors, issues of energy that is required for value addition, but at the same time, of course, looking at the agriculture as a product that we can trade across the corner. And taking advantage of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we believe agriculture is an example of what can be traded across the continent.
Alors, Monsieur Gatete, les pays africains payent un coût d'emprunt beaucoup plus élevé que la moyenne mondiale, ce qui constitue un obstacle majeur à l'investissement agricole. Alors, quelles en sont les principales raisons et quel est le rôle que pourrait jouer une agence africaine de notation de crédit pour réduire ces coûts?
The African countries are paying way high amount. And the main reason why they are paying so highly is because most of the countries have very poor rating. And when you have a poor rating and you mobilize resources outside from the private sector, they look at the rating and your credibility, which you don't have. On the African continent, currently, most countries don't have good rating. We only have 2 investment-grade countries, which is Botswana and Mauritius. The others have very poor rating. They were used to getting concessional resources where you don't need to have a rating, because that one you could access it because you are a sovereign nation, and that was contained in the new financial order. But these resources are not enough, and we need to go out and mobilize more resources. And that's why the Economic Commission for Africa, together with Africa Peer Review Mechanism and UNDP, we are helping member countries to see how they can improve their own rating. But also having our own rating agency, because the rating agency, the Africa Rating Agency, would understand the context of Africa and would understand, of course, what we go through, maybe better than other rating agencies which are not based in Africa, which may not understand the background, the challenges that we face. And that's why we are there to support, to make sure that our African countries can get a very good rating. But at the same time, we are also structuring innovative financing mechanisms, including the blended finance, the green bonds, the blue bonds, the sustainability-linked bonds, and other structures that can help them, but also looking at other long-term kind of facilities that can help. We're also looking at de-risking the investment so that we can, it's not only the government that will do the investment, but also we need private sector. And because of that perceived risk or the risk, that's why we are looking for de-risking instruments, the guarantees that are provided by international financial institutions and other bilateral donors that can help in terms of giving confidence for private investors who are coming to invest in Africa.
Qui sont les acteurs qui financent la mise en place de cette agence de notation et comment garantir son efficacité, sa crédibilité?
First of all, our international financial institutions, that's their job. The Africa Development Bank has a guarantee that helps the private sector to de-risk. The IFC, the International Finance Corporation of the World Bank, that also has that one. The World Bank also has the guarantee scheme that is in place. The European Union has a guarantee. The other bilateral, they also have so many guarantees of different nature. So they are there. But then they don't simply just bring the guarantees. We need to make sure that we develop the programs, the projects, prepare the environment, and then the guarantees will be negotiated to make sure that they can help and assist the private sector to do the investment. There are many investors who are willing to come in, but they don't want to take that kind of risk or the perceived risk because they don't know. And that's why our job as the Economic Commission for Africa is to package the investment within the regional value chain. And once we have done that, then we bring in the people who can finance, the people who can de-risk, and then attract the private sector who would come in and then be able to invest, but also there are resources for them because there is guarantees. And that's our job, that's what we are trying to do. And that's why we're talking about the big projects, including the regional value chain between DRC and Zambia for the batteries and electric vehicles, because the raw materials are there. And we are establishing a special economic zone, but we want to make sure that we package it in such a way that guarantees can come and the private sector can invest. The same thing for the project on agro-processing between Zambia and Zimbabwe, which is really would support in terms of providing enough food and added value to the whole entire continent and beyond. And to do that kind of value addition, we need the private sector, but also we need the UN agencies to be able to support the farmers, to support the whole entire system, and also to bring in the guarantees. So there are many opportunities that are there, and we, as the Economic Commission for Africa, we are ready to support.
En évoquant la notion de risque, beaucoup d'investisseurs considèrent que le risque est le principal frein à l'agriculture africaine. Alors, quelles solutions concrètes propose la CEA pour réduire ces risques? Pouvez-vous nous donner des exemples d'outils financiers déjà en développement?
The first thing before you come to the resources of the financing is really understanding what is necessary. There, for example, in agriculture, you need productivity. You need improved seeds, you need fertilizers, you need to do irrigation, and also you need, in some countries which don't have enough land, to do the land consolidation. But then at the same time, you need also, once you have harvested, you need to have post-harvest storage. And then you need to know, of course, what else is required. The investment in roads, the investment in electricity, the investment in technology, and also the industries that are going to add value. Now, when you're talking about financing, they are at different levels. The ones who are doing value addition, those ones can get money much easier because they process and export. And that one, they can borrow in any way they want. But when it comes to the farmer and the infrastructure, it is the government naturally that does the investment. But you need to assist the farmers who are the primary producers in that value chain for productivity and for storage, which need a different type of financing, because you have the small and medium-sized enterprises, you have individuals, you have small farmers who need their own specialized support. And that one is structured with the help of the government, because the nature of agriculture depends on the season. And that's why the blended finance, which I was talking about, that is organized by the government to use the government resources to attract more of the private resources and to be able to now to cater for the small farmers and the SMEs, the micro and the small and medium-sized enterprises. And that's why I'm saying that each country can organize it that way before even you go to the external resources for the big farmers. But for the others who are doing the value addition, they use the traditional, the normal financial institutions. So one has to define which financing for what, because agriculture is not the same. That's why you look at it holistically and then know what can be done by the government, what can be done by the farmers themselves, what can be done by the private sector. But also there is, now that we are talking about the youth require training. They need hands-on. There has to be a facility of how you bring in the youth so that they can participate, they can be trained, and then from there they are assisted in terms of having the startup fund so that they can be able to participate in doing it properly and be able to be linked with external markets.
Restons avec la notion de risque. Alors, quelles sont aujourd'hui les leçons que les pays africains peuvent tirer des mécanismes de réduction de risque adoptés dans d'autres régions pour créer des options de financement plus solides pour les chaînes de valeur agricoles?
Yeah, first of all, one can learn from several, they can learn even from each other. On the African continent, there are areas that have succeeded. If you're in horticulture, the requirements are different from when you are in other kind of areas. And there, you have to understand the whole value chain of getting the product, of adding value, of transporting it, linking it with the external markets, assisted by the government. And once you understand the whole value chain, then one comes up with a product that assists you. The export product, export credit, that is usually in a development bank of any African country. That one helps in terms of accompanying you from the point of export to accessing the external markets much easier. But it has to be done in a very organized way. And that's why the countries are developing certain facilities in a way that they organize the exports for the farmers. Let me give you an example. In Rwanda, they have the export for agriculture products. It is an institution that facilitates all the farmers, guides them which products are needed by what market, if it is French beans, if it is horticulture that are needed in China, in Europe, in North America, then they organize the farmers together and then they produce. They look at the transportation, whether it is by cargo, whether it's by water, whether it's by any other means, because there is a market, then you know what is in terms of the paperwork, what is required in terms of the fees, what is the cost, and then you guide them. Go train them, then you say if there is a guarantee, you don't go it on your own. The government will assist you on how this guarantee comes in so that you can the market and they can all the way. So that means the government role is for facilitation and support financially that can allow you to continue exporting. And then from there you go back and increase at scale the production, but also linked to the farmers, but also for you focusing on the export side. This is what is being done in many countries, and it can be replicated.
La zone de libre-échange continentale africaine, la ZLECA, offre d'importantes opportunités pour renforcer le commerce intra-africain des produits agricoles. Quelles réformes ou stratégies faut-il accélérer pour créer plus d'emplois et de croissance?
Yeah, already the Africa Continental Free Trade Area has been adapted. And then the whole, by the African Union Commission, by all the heads of state signed off. The rest is now how to implement it. The protocols have already been designed. Now we are in the level of implementation. First is to connect the whole entire continent, to remove the tariff and non-tariff barriers, to provide infrastructure in place, to link all the corridors, northern corridor, central corridor, southern corridor, and so forth. And also to make sure that there is a free movement of people and goods and so on and so forth. So that one has already been designed. The rest is now how to make sure that it also has it. And now it is so necessary because of the external tariffs that have been put on so many of the African countries for us to start now trading among ourselves. We have never gone beyond 20% in terms of the export, especially trade in agriculture, among our own African countries, which is the lowest ever. And if we take all the products, it has been within the range of 16%. And now we wanted to increase, and the only way is to remove these kind of barriers that are preventing the trade to happen. And that's why the governments, many of them, have already announced that they don't want to export raw materials anymore. They want to add value. And to add value, you need to create industries, and that's why you are focusing on industry. So to do that, then you need the regional value chain from the production all the way to processing, so that you can export the products which are really final and finished materials. And we are working with the World Trade Organization to make sure that the standards conform to the international standards for the African countries. So there is a lot of work that is going on, working together with the Secretariat of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, where we think that we can make progress as we move on. Because it's not a long time ago. It took so many years for the European market to take hold. But for us, from as recent as 2018, really we can see progress already. It's not a long time, but progress is happening, and then the whole continent is committed to make sure that we get this market working right. Not only trade within Africa, but also between Africa and the rest of the world. But what is very important is adding value, because you create jobs on the continent.
Toujours dans le registre de la ZLECA, comment la collaboration entre gouvernement, secteur privé, institutions régionales peuvent-elles accélérer la mise en place de corridors commerciaux essentiels à la sécurité alimentaire?
Already we are doing it. The Economic Commission for Africa was assisting the African Union in terms of the design of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. It started, as you know, from the regions. They had so many regional economic communities. There are 8 of them from the whole entire continent, the Eastern Africa, Southern Africa, Central, North Africa, West Africa. There are many, there are 8 of them.
And with the experience that we got in terms of the free trade within that economic community, then we are using that one to leverage now to go to the continental level. And to do that, we, as the Economic Commission for Africa, we are assisting regional economic communities by establishing the AFCFTA strategies that they can implement, as we do to assist the member countries, so that they develop their own strategies to implement that, and then we accompany them in terms of the implementation. And in terms of monitoring, we are also working with the African Union Commission, which is our next door neighbor, to assist them in terms of following up and, of course, unblocking any constraints that may be along the way. But this is the work that is in progress already. And we work directly with African, as I mentioned, with the Secretariat of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area.
Alors, l'Afrique dépense plus de 115 milliards de dollars par an en importations alimentaires, malgré son immense potentiel agricole. Quelles chaînes de valeur agricoles sont aujourd'hui prêtes à l'investissement pour les fonds de capital investissement et de capital risque et offrir des rendements intéressants?
That's a very, very important point, and it is very unfortunate that
Africa has to import 115 billion of food with the land that we have, with the energy potential that we have in terms of solar, in terms of hydro and other energy that we have, and also the fertile. And also knowing that a country like Morocco has the largest reserves of phosphate. And then you have Nigeria and you have other countries, meaning that fertilizer can be produced on the African continent. Now, this is what exactly we are talking about, is that let's create the corridors for agriculture. And the example that I gave you of the agro-processing park, which you are now trying to develop between Zambia and Zimbabwe to cater for the whole Southern Africa, working with BADEA, the Arab Bank for Africa's Development, which has agreed to finance that so that we show what is possible, so that this time all the areas of meat and other products can be processed on the African continent to feed Africa. But also cocoa, which we are saying that cocoa for a long time, if you combine Ivory Coast, they have the largest producer, they are the largest producer of cocoa. But chocolate is being processed outside Africa. And we are saying, let's fix what is missing and do it properly and process it here, so that you don't continue to export the raw materials or semi-finished products. Let's do everything up to the final product so that the revenues can stay on the African continent. We have already identified on the continent 94 value chains. And those include minerals, they also include agriculture. Agriculture is so many. Where we have cotton, where we have coffee, where we have so many in terms of agriculture and livestock. We have identified them. The rest is now designing and bringing in other stakeholders so that we can do the implementation. And the leadership of that is actually the Economic Commission for Africa.
Nous allons à présent aborder le dernier volet de cette entrevue. Alors, quels critères les investisseurs devraient-ils utiliser pour identifier les meilleures opportunités afin de renforcer la souveraineté alimentaire, créer de l'emploi et améliorer la résilience économique?
Well, the whole of Africa is an agricultural continent. There is nothing to teach a farmer.
They know what to grow. And the countries also know the need of this because you have to feed our own people. We are the largest population and will continue to grow. And that's why we are saying that by 2050, 1 in 3 youth will be an African. And as the population declines in other regions, Africa, it is increasing at a rapid rate. Feeding them becomes now a priority. We look at it not only for feeding them, but also the nutrition part, so that we can also have the population that is really not only healthy, but also that is empowered. And we want them to get into agriculture as also one of the areas that really can be their career. And that's why we're working to say, how do we get the youth getting involved so that we don't leave farming for our parents and our grandparents? And then how do they do it in a modern way so that this time it's modernized. It's not the normal farming that others used to do with no right instruments. But now we need mechanized farming. We need also the infrastructure that is needed. We need irrigation, which requires resources that maybe our parents never used to have. And then doing it right in a way that we look at it as an export product. And that's why we are saying that agriculture, we need to look at it in a modernized way. And that's why we are emphasizing on the training for the young people to go and get experience, to be included in the technical and vocational training, not only in the university theoretically, but also practically, so that they are also assisted. And we also talked about incubation, so that they come up with a product, they come up with how they want to do it, and then we develop also financing tools, having innovation funds that can help them deliberately to develop that area of agriculture.
Donc, l'avant-dernière question, comment l'Afrique doit-elle équilibrer les investissements dans l'infrastructure physique avec les réformes structurelles et politiques pour combler le déficit de financement?
The infrastructure are meant for something. That means facilitating trade, bring the goods from the rural sector to the urban sector or to the factories where they are processed. And this becomes very critical because if you don't plan to facilitate the produce, the value addition, the productivity, then the infrastructure don't mean much. If it is irrigation, it's to make sure that you increase and it is resilient even during the dry season. Even with the impact of climate, you can still continue to grow agriculture and that it has to benefit so many of the farmers. So once you do it, you know it has an impact. If it is the road for transportation, you know definitely it has a very huge impact in terms of the transportation. If it is energy, you know you can do the processing. You don't have to travel long distances. If it is communication, then you know that the farmers will be able to get the prices, the inputs that they need in terms of fertilizers and in terms of the improved seeds and the rest of it. And once you have this infrastructure, they should be there to facilitate the productivity and the production and the value addition of agriculture products, including the exports, where you give information on the latest prices, on what is required, and then also on how the ordinary farmers are being assisted by the government. And this helps in terms of putting the infrastructure in place. It's not just for the sake of it. So when you are putting investments into the infrastructure, you have to ask yourself, it is infrastructure to do what? And if you ask yourself like that one, then it helps in terms of planning, in terms of budgeting, and in terms of execution, including the sequencing. What do you do first? What do you do second? And so forth. So the countries are doing that to make sure that they can sustain in terms of sustainable food production. Because you want to make sure if you have to have security at home, food security is number one, because you need to feed your people. And you must plan the whole planning, the whole budget of the country, regardless of the means. I think this is priority number one.
Alors, nous allons clore cette interview avec une question pour la CEA. Alors, quel est le rôle que la Commission économique pour l'Afrique des Nations Unies attribue aux partenaires extérieurs pour soutenir la souveraineté alimentaire du continent?
What is very important is to understand that this not only help to the countries, there is also a benefit. This is a business. And that's why they have to get involved. And one of the products that we are talking about, food, is something that we all need. It is something that we need forever. It is not something that we need today and we don't need tomorrow. And that's why investing in food, investing in agriculture, it's not just doing a favor. It is also benefiting from that. Because whether it is in Africa or outside Africa, we all need food. And that's why supporting food production in a sustainable way provides security to all of us. And in Africa, that's where we still have more land. That's where we still have more arable land, the land that is more fertile. And that means as the population increases globally, there will be more interest in Africa and how to support Africa so that we can feed not only Africa, but also feed the rest of the world. And that's why everybody should be interested.
Alors, Monsieur Claver Gatete, Financial Afrique vous remercie d'avoir répondu à nos questions en marge de l'African Food Forum. Donc, je rappelle que vous êtes le secrétaire exécutif de la Commission économique pour l'Afrique des Nations Unies. Merci d'avoir été des nôtres.
Thank you very much. The United Nations Economic
Commission for Africa will continue supporting not only this sector, but also making sure that we can communicate globally the interests of why everybody should get into this business of supporting food security. Thank you so much.
Merci également à vous pour la fidélité renouvelée à Financial Afrique. C'est tout pour l'invité d'aujourd'hui. Nous vous donnons rendez-vous la semaine prochaine, certainement avec un autre invité. Mais d'ici là, prenez bien soin de vous.